Whew. Hey, I'm your host, Jamal Page. University life is often a reflection of the cities that it's located in. So when universities create offices and programs in an effort to support their communities, sometimes those efforts extend into the cities as well. This is FoCo Talks. How's it going, man? How you doing?
Not too bad,
Yeah?
man. I'm living.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
How you doing so far?
I'm good. Yeah. Welcome to this episode of FoCo Talks, where today we are with Duan Ruff, who is the director of the Black African American Cultural Center over at CSU. Duan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
we're excited to have you on the show. So tell us a little bit for people at home who aren't familiar with you, kind of what you do over at CSU and how you get involved within the community.
Well, again, I am the director of an office called the Black African American Cultural Center, and its function is to support Black students and support Black culture on campus so that as these students go through their college career, their culture is present with them. And because Colorado State has over 25,000 students and only 1,500 of them, and that's grad and undergrad, are Black, it also provides a safe space for them to start with their careers and college careers and get settled and feel like they have somewhere they can decompress and relax and be around folks who share their culture.
Right. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, and I was curious myself about, is working within the collegiate space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every year you have an influx of new students coming to CSU.
Mm-hmm.
As the years go on, do you kind of see changes reflected in like the new incoming class of students year by year as it pertains to like the Black African American culture or just even Fort Collins culture itself? Are you able to like really identify changes year by year, or is it kind of consistent?
There are changes year by year. And in some respects, like I have a staff of 22, and each year, no matter what the makeup is of the staff, it is a totally new energy. It's a totally new vibe. And it's kind of that way with students. You have kind of the students who've been there, who kind of know what's going on and know what they want. And then every year you just get a new group that has different likes. Their vibe's just a little bit different than the previous group. They introduce a little different music, a little different TikTok reels, all the things that students do. They introduce a little something new. And we're able to keep the foundation for things that they need to accomplish or need to know in order to accomplish what they need to. So there's a lot of change. And I think that change is what I like about it. No year is the same. And if I'm ever doing anything the same for a few years, then we got problems.
Right. Yeah, because I was wondering, as even just outside of CSU, right, even just as Fort Collins itself as a community evolves and grows, I imagine you're probably seeing a lot of that also reflected within the students themselves.
Yeah, I think, well, first off, Fort Collins, from when I was here, I originally went here from like 97. That's the first year I got to this city. And what Fort Collins looks like now compared to then, it's night and day. So as these changes occur, I think it does mimic what's happening within the campus community. But the campus community is so much more diverse, believe it or not, than the city community. So students tend to find like this shelter and this kind of safe haven on campus. And even more so in our office, I like to tell people, at a predominantly white institution, I spend my entire day supporting and being around Black students. So that's a unique experience for me. So sometimes when I leave work, I am kind of reminded, oh, wait a minute, the city doesn't look like this. The city doesn't operate like this. Even though now there's more diversity in this city of Fort Collins today than there has been even 10 years ago. When I first worked in this office as an assistant director, there's a lot more diversity in this office. So It's the city slowly starts to mimic campus when it comes to the amount of diversity that we see in the city.
Right. So what do you think kind of facilitated that change over time? Because it was much different when you moved here. Do you think that that kind of change just happens kind of naturally as, the passage of time? Or do you think maybe there's been programs or events or incentives within the city itself that have helped facilitate that change that you see now?
I think it's been commitment by key people in the city and in the community that have created that change, right? There's been a lot of people that I've met that work for the city who've been committed to saying, hey, Dwayne, let's collaborate. Let's create these events. Let's create that. Here's some ideas I have. Are you all interested in anything like this? So I've actually had quite a few connections with the city, kind of seeing what this what opportunities are here, and there's been some great things happening. And so I say more than just some kind of um, laws or anything like that. The people who are here now are committed to seeing things grow and change, and I've loved that. And I love the people who I've met, the friendships, the relationships. It's just been dope. It's been real dope.
So would you say like your program in particular, right? Have you seen support from other people outside of the program, outside of, that specific community who see what you're doing and they recognize that and they're like, yeah, we want to help support. We want to find ways to like help Dwayne do more of what he's doing or help, at least give them access to the resources that they need over at CSU to be doing what they're doing.
So yeah, I feel like we get a lot of support from the community, but it's because of the programs that we run, not necessarily because we are a program. So we're an office, and within our office, we have several programs. So an example would be our GPS program. We heard from the Museum of Art right there at the Oak Street Plaza, and they reached out to us and said, hey, we know you got this program with kids, and we got this Black art exhibit. We want you all to come out and see it. Next thing you know, here we are at the museum with a whole bunch of students doing an art walk, and they're listening to how these art pieces were created and doing a lot of cool things like that. So we have that. There's another program called LLCs and Degrees, Sankofa, which we can talk about Sankofa if you want to. And that program, the city reached out. We heard you have this program where you're helping students. We have some funding. We have some ideas. Can we connect? Yeah. So there's several places like that where programming that we do reaches the community. And once it reaches the community, people want to connect. And our office has become a conduit for connection, right, between the university and community.
Yeah, and I love seeing stuff like that when, there's these offices or programs that are built out, meant to, do something positive within the community that they exist in. And then the community as a whole recognizes that and they all come together to see what they can do to help support that stuff as well. So I love seeing stuff like that. I mean, I've seen you all over the place doing all sorts of things. I keep running into, I think I saw you over at the, Juneteenth event. Yep. I've seen you just about everywhere around town where there's some type of community-oriented thing that is meant to help, bolster the Fort Collins community that we live in. And I think that's awesome because then I think what happens because of that, right, is that whether it's on purpose or incidental, you yourself start to become like a pillar of what you are standing for and like an icon of like the change that you're trying to bring about within the community. And I think stuff like that is great because then other people start to recognize that, maybe who have been waiting on the sidelines or watching from a distance. Maybe they're hesitant. They don't really know like how to get involved, or they want to do exactly the stuff that you're doing. Maybe they just aren't aware that it even exists. So I think, definitely keep doing the work that you're doing because people are noticing. And I think that the work that you're doing is like very much needed within this community. So I think that's a great thing. I was going to ask, how does what you do on campus extend to off campus around Fort Collins? But that's kind of what we literally just described.
Yeah, and I can say more about that because, it's kind of a unique position that I'm in, right? Because of the numbers of Black people that live here, the community tends to reach out to me because I am one of the only, if you start searching up Black in Fort Collins, our office is going to be one of the first things that pops up on any Google search. Yeah. So I've had parents reach out to me in the community looking for help for their kid and support. I've had different entities reach out because they want a Black representation at different events. And so it's not a bad thing. It provides opportunities for me to say, hey, well, I don't know if I'm the person to fulfill that, but here, let me connect you to some people I know that are, so I become a connector for all these people as well. So I feel like what's happened here in Fort Collins is I have become kind of a pillar because of the Juneteenth events, because of the MLK event, which I'm part of the planning committee on. These things kind of lends itself to putting you in position to be kind of a beacon of light, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is make sure that in those spaces, people feel like, whereas I represent Black culture and I represent a piece of Black culture, excuse me, and I represent support for marginalized community members. I want to create a situation where people come to me knowing that they can get help and that we can find a way through it together, right? There are moments where we need the picketing and the protesting and all that, but I tend to focus on more long-term results. More long-term results are building bridges, building connections, because if I can get people to see the beauty in the culture that exists and the diversity within the culture that exists, then I think we'll all have a better time in our experience with the culture. And if there's things that come up that are negative, we're in a better position to handle them because there's relationships built. And we can all sit down and say, hey, how are we going to find a way through this and find a way forward?
Yeah. I want to open it up to give you the opportunity to talk about the history of the Black African American Cultural Center over at CSU, kind of the origins of how that got started, and maybe even the future of kind of where you hope to take that.
This is my favorite time because I've been working on this story because I've learned it, and it's one of the things I tell whenever I talk about the office. It's actually pretty cool. So I start with the year 1968, and I don't know what you know about the year 1968, but there's a documentary about it. You should check it out. It's actually pretty cool.
Is it called?
1968.
Okay.
And that was the year, I mean, there's several assassinations. There's the Vietnam War protests on campuses. There's all these things.
On the CSU campus?
No.
Okay.
Across the country.
Across the country.
In 1968.
Right. Yeah.
So in 1968 also, we were part of all that upheaval. But what was going on here was there were 46 Black and Latinx students on campus. And I think there were a couple of Native American students. I think it was like 2 or 3 on campus at that time. And they had a lot of issues as far as them trying to navigate the college system in that time. So you had students who couldn't rent apartments. So they had to have their white identified friends rent apartments for them. And then they would move in, and when they did apartment checks, they'd have to take their pictures and all that down and kind of vacate the premises so that the landlord would not think that there are any Black or non-white people living in those spaces.
And that was only just as far back as the 60s.
That's just the 60s,
okay.
Yeah.
That's not that far ago.
That is not that far ago. So from that, there were groups of students, and ironically, it was led mostly by Black and Latinx women. So they did a sit-in or a sleep-in on the lawn, and I don't know if you know what the White House is. It's not the White House, but it's a big White House on the corner of Laurel and Shields, where Laurel runs west right into Shields. And that house was President William Morgan's house. And if that name sounds familiar, the library is named after William Morgan. So he was living in that house, and they staged a sit-in or a sleep-in, and they camped out. Now, there's stories about William Morgan's wife trying to bring cookies, and some people wanting the cookies, other people not wanting the cookies. Someone saying, "We don't want no cookies, we want some results." You know, all that good, good stuff. But then, from that, the protesting continued on the steps of the Capitol. Now, mind you, it's these Black and Latinx women who are leading it. Meredith Levert, Vivian Kerr, and forgive me, I do not know the names of the Latinx women who were part of that movement. But William Morgan looks in the crowd and chooses a Black and Latinx man and says, "All right, y'all, come on." So if there's audio of this that hopefully we'll get up on our website so it can live and people can see this history. And you can hear the indecision in the guys' voices as they're talking to William Morgan, and because they aren't really versed on what actually is taking place, but they are still for the cause. They've been a part of it. So from that became a organization or an opportunity called Project Go, or Project Generating Opportunities, and that was the first iteration of the Black African American Cultural Center and El Centro, which is the Latinx version of our office. So about 1976 is when they split those two offices. And those were the official beginnings of El Centro and Black Student Services at that time. So it stayed that way for a while. And in that time, Vivian Kerr was the first director of our office. And they started a lot of the programs that are running today. They did a mentoring program where they had a retreat. And just last weekend, we took students up for this retreat. So we have pictures in our office from 1988, and I think the retreat went back before that. And it's just, I mean, it's phenomenal to walk through and see all the photos on the top level. We'll have to get you out there someday to check
I
that
was just
out.
about to say I need to see those photos too.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is great stuff.
Okay.
And so though that's how the office began. And at that time, the office was focused on the same things it's focused on now, being a place where students can go and relax and breathe and have a chance to connect with students who are like them as they go out, and usually they're the only one in their classes. It also was a place where you can get academic support. Um, you can imagine if people won't let you rent out places, there are probably still some people who were working here at that time who didn't believe that these students could academically make it. So whether they had the resources, the tutoring, and all those things that are needed for students to be successful. So the office went out and built relationships around campus so it could do that. We still do that to this day. I go out around campus, I build relationships with different colleges, with different key people, so that students can have resources and have people who I can say, hey, I'm not going to send you to some random office. I'm going to walk you down here and hand you off to John, and John's going to be the one to take care of you and make sure you get what you need to thrive in your college career.
I like that. Yeah. It
So,
sounds like a lot of the solutions to some of these things are, building those bridges and making the connections that you said, rather than, people kind of going off and trying to make it happen within their own like isolated groups, which can be a very understandable method, right? When you've already been pushed out, you kind of just try to do things on your own anyway. But it sounds like sometimes the benefit or the path to making things better is to actually reconnect and make these, connections with other people within your community.
yeah, and as far as this institution, um, the institution ain't going nowhere, right? The
Yeah.
institution is going to be there. It's the student that needs to get something from that institution, and then I think that relationship changes over time, right? As you become alumni, you become successful. Now, the institution needs you and your support, and so there's a cyclical effect to it. But I think that that ability um, to make sure that we are working for students to have opportunity, to have equity. I think those are the things that are signature to our office and that will never change. And we do events such as a homecoming pageant. We do that every year, and those kind of events are showcases of the beauty of the culture that is here, the Black culture that's here in Fort Collins. Because all these students, you know, they're here for their 4 or 5 years and they're going to be members of this community. And what we want is for the community to embrace them. And quite honestly, we want them to embrace their community. It's a learning curve, whether you come from a predominantly Black community and you come here and there's far more white identified individuals as you've ever seen. But there's also students that come here who grew up in predominantly white environments, and they come here and there's more Black identified people than they've ever been around. So there's a variety of experiences that are happening, and our job is to create space and hold space for all of them and all of that.
So yeah, I love the work that you're doing. I think you guys should definitely keep it up. If someone out there is looking for ways to also support or be involved with the stuff that you guys are doing, where can they go to find you guys? Is there a website, Instagram page? Like, what would you put out there?
We got all that.
Yeah.
So I would say first, our website is baacc.colorado.state.edu. But again, we're an office at Colorado State University, right in the Laurie Student Center, room 335. Pull up if you want to, and see what's going on. We have a YouTube channel, we have an Instagram page, and we have a Facebook page. All of those, we have a content creator who does a lot of great work with content on there, and these are all students. Yeah. So all the work you see done on there is all done by students. So we have multiple ways to reach out. And if anybody wants to team up and do something, let's do it. My answer is always, let's see what we can do.
I love it. I love it. Well, Duan, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Anytime. Right. For you guys watching at home, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of FoCo Talks. And please stay tuned for more. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Peace.